Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to session 3 of part 1. Okay, paragraph 14 of Keeping Children Safe in Education. Child protection training and induction should also include online safety. So what they've added now is a part of induction, online safety should be part of the safeguarding training along with regular updates. And this is because now for children, there is no difference between real life and life online. And that's why they're open to so many safeguarding issues online. And therefore, it's important that staff have online safety training and regular updates in relation to online safety at induction and following on to that as well.
Just on the induction, Khadija, schools need to demonstrate that when new staff, whoever they are, whether that's administrative staff, lunchtime staff, teaching staff, support staff, leaders, that you have a really thorough induction process for staff when they join your school. And part of that induction, as Khadija has shared, is online safety. There needs to be a very important, there should be an important part dedicated to staff understanding your online safety procedures and processes, and also about behaviour. Behaviour should also be part of the induction that they receive. So what are your behaviour policies? We've talked about it at length already in the first 2 sessions that we've delivered. And alongside that, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you are providing your whole staff team with regular updates to online safety. So it's not enough that you are just doing a one-off online safety training session and expecting to be meeting requirements. That is not what is being said here. You need to be ensuring that you are providing those updates, you are recording evidence of that training that you are providing to staff, so that you are able to be clear when asked, this is when we did our online safety training, and these are the times that we have continued to update staff on it. So that's really important that your processes are thorough and that you're able to share that when you are inspected.
Okay. Right, to paragraph 17, they have added the word exploitation. So previously it read, all staff should know what to do if a child tells them he or she is being abused or neglected. However, in the new Keeping Children Safe in Education September 21 guidance, they have added on the word exploited. So this reinforces the requirement on staff to know about what exploitation is and what to do if a child shares with them that they have been exploited in any form or way.
I think it's important as well, isn't it, Khadija, that if I was to ask a member of staff, what do you understand by the word exploitation?
Yeah.
Every member of staff should be able to share what they mean, what that means.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, part of your staff training is to ensure that that is clear, that you have got some time devoted to staff understanding that word. It's been added for a reason, brothers and sisters. You've got to ensure that you understand the importance of it. They haven't just added this word just to make things a bit clearer. It's been there, it's been put there for a reason. You've got to make sure that your staff know what that means. And of course, at the beginning of that sentence is all staff know what to do if a child tells them. Okay, so we've been very used to knowing what staff should do if a child tells you they're being abused, but now what would they do if the child told them that they were being exploited?
Okay. I've just put in 2 example questions of what staff could get asked. So staff could possibly get asked, what are the indicators for exploitation? Again, that would be testing staff knowledge on, are you really aware of what exploitation is, and what are the indicators of exploitation? Are they different from abuse and neglect? And staff should be able to confidently answer that. So these are just some of the possible answers. Another question that they could possibly be asked is, why is there an emphasis on the expectation of staff to know about exploitation compared to before? So what, and staff can get asked these questions by Ofsted, that why is it that previously you weren't expected to know so much about exploitation, and now there is a particular emphasis on exploitation now. So the answer to that would be that exploitation, specifically CSE and county lines from child criminal exploitation, are part of the extrafamilial safeguarding issues, which are quite commonly taking place. So outside the family home, in the communities and the areas that our children reside in, these are the common factors that are taking place at this current time. And therefore, it is very, very important that staff are aware of exploitation and what it entails and how to deal with it. Okay, a new edition of, this is a completely new paragraph, paragraph 18, and that says all staff should be able to reassure victims that they are taken seriously and that they will be supported and kept safe. A victim should never be given the impression that they are creating a problem by reporting abuse, sexual violence, or sexual harassment, nor should a victim ever be made to feel ashamed for making a report. Now, this paragraph has been added, I feel, based on the review, Ofsted review of sexual violence and harassment, because part of that, some of the outcomes of that review was that children felt that they were not believed. Adults weren't taking them seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we have mentioned this before.
Yeah.
This is a very, very common thread throughout keeping children safe. So it emphasizes how important it is that you as a school are able to demonstrate that you have got systems in place to reassure victims, that your staff know what to do, that children in your schools will be able to say, yes, if I go to a member of staff, they are going to listen to me, they are going to support me, they are going to keep me safe. That is exactly what they should be able to say. And obviously the fact that they've gone on to say a victim should never, they've used the word never, be given the impression that they are creating a problem. Absolutely, Khadija is right. This is from the review that Ofsted have done, that children too many times have said, people thought we were making a fuss, and that should never be the impression that that children are given. And of course, they've given the list. So by reporting abuse, sexual violence, or sexual harassment, nor should a victim ever, they've used the word ever, be made to feel ashamed. They've not chosen these words, brothers and sisters, you know, out of thought. This has been very, very carefully regarded before they've added it. So you've got to make sure that you in your schools are clear about what it is that you now need to do if you're not doing so already, or if you need to strengthen. It's a very important paragraph, really important paragraph for everyone in the school to consider.
And if I can just add that this is not, though this is this is based on the outcome of the review that Ofsted did on sexual violence and harassment, the outcomes of the review have not just impacted procedures on sexual violence and harassment, but it's impacted all safeguarding procedures. And therefore, if you see here in the paragraph, it specifically mentions abuse as well. So it mentions sexual violence and sexual harassment, but before that, it mentions abuse. So again, it's having an impact on all safeguarding procedures. There's a link to the review. So if you get time, it would be very good for you to go back and have a look at the outcomes of the review. So that's the link to the review. Paragraph 19, the list of when staff are expected to be alert to potential need for early help for a child has been expanded to include when a child has a certain health condition. So these are new additions. So there's a list of particular pupils where early help, staff should consider putting in place early help, but these are new additions. So when a child has a certain health condition, has a mental health need, is at risk of modern slavery, trafficking, sexual criminal exploitation.
Khadija, can we just go back on that list?
Yeah.
Okay, so in this particular slide, Khadija shared with you that the list has been expanded. So the additions have been included for a reason. And it makes it clear that staff are expected, they should be aware of when there is a need for early help. Now, when it lists a child has certain health conditions, our children now, or in our schools now, there are a growing number of children coming to us with a health condition. And so actually, are you aware that that child doesn't just sit on your medical register, that they actually need, that you need to pay greater attention to them? Children with mental health needs, every single one of us today would be able to talk about children that has a mental health need in our children in our schools. So actually, it's about your care and consideration for that particular pupil. Again, we have a greater risk of sexual and criminal exploitation in our schools because children are online. You know, we are aware, myself and Khadija are aware of numerous schools where girls particularly are being sexually exploited. So it's really important that you are clear which pupils are more likely to be at risk. So that's just part of the expanded list. Khadija going to move on to the second slide where that continues, but certainly it's something that you need to be alert to and be aware of.
Yeah, is at risk of honor-based abuse such as FGM or forced marriage, is persistently absent from education, including persistent absence for part of the school day. So again, it's not just about being absent consistently, but it's being absent for part of the school day as well. So now they've included part of the school day. So it could be an AM session or a PM session that they're absent for. It doesn't necessarily have to be a whole school day. But you've got to look at the patterns of absences. And again, that child would then be vulnerable and therefore eligible for early help. Now, early help, again, if I can add that, it should be something that we analyze as our pupils in school. We need to analyze each and every pupil, and we need to work out which pupils would benefit from early help. So we don't wait for a concern to arise and then put help in place. We should, based on their vulnerabilities, we should put in help earlier on. That's why it's called early help. So we should put those procedures and support in place so it doesn't go on to becoming a safeguarding issue. Sina, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, the FGM and forced marriage is not new to any of us colleagues. But actually, you know, I know of a school where inspectors came in and it was just one child that had gone to a country that was high on the list for FGM practice. And the inspector was, you know, just very concerned that the school had not done enough to ensure that this child was protected. And actually that school went on to get a grade 4 judgment. So it's really important that you are understanding what is required of you in your schools in this paragraph. And this last bullet point about being persistently absent. Now, because our children are spending greater and greater time online, many of them late into the night. You will all be familiar with this. Is that something that's concerning? Because in the morning, they are failing to come to school on time. Parents will often say to you, but she doesn't wake up, but I'm trying to get her or him to wake up. And by the time she gets ready and I've got the other children ready, or whatever it is, these are familiar stories. And so actually, is there a concern here that we are spending too much time online and therefore that child's safety is a concern? And so coming to school persistently absent or for part of the day, whenever that is, normally the concern would come more readily at the start of the day when children are not able to get to school on time. Is that something that the school needs to be aware of? Is early help intervention required? So actually, attendance records and record keeping of attendance plays a really important part in this process. And if colleagues are doing, colleagues have different responsibilities, how are colleagues speaking together? When are they speaking together? When are they discussing concerns? I've visited a number of schools over the last few weeks this summer, And I'm quite concerned about attendance records in some of the schools that I visited. It doesn't give me enough information about that attendance has been a high priority in those schools for some of those children. It's not some that's a concern. Only one needs to be a concern for an inspector, because that child could be at risk of harm. Okay.
Okay, paragraph 20 now includes an expectation that staff are aware of specific safeguarding issues such as child criminal exploitation and child sexual exploitation. This is the paragraph that's in the Keeping Children Safe in Education September 21 guidance, where it specifically it's in bold: child criminal exploitation and child sexual exploitation. So staff are able to identify cases of children who may be in need of help or protection. I'm going to show you, this is the paragraph from September 2020 guidance of Keeping Children Safe in Education, and in there it does not specifically mention child criminal exploitation or child sexual exploitation. So why have they specifically mentioned child criminal exploitation and child sexual exploitation now in this year's guidance? And this is because these are now prominent safeguarding issues like abuse and neglect. Therefore, it has specifically been mentioned to emphasize how crucial it is that staff are aware of what criminal exploitation is and what child sexual exploitation is as well, because it's so common now. It's the norm. It's happening day in, day out. A child is experiencing criminal exploitation, county lines, sexual exploitation, online, in person. It's the norm now, and that is why there's so much emphasis on staff to know about these particular safeguarding issues. Christina, would you like to add anything?
I think it's really important that as leaders listening to us today, that you are able to confidently say that every member of your staff would know what both of these are. And is there more work required for them to have a really clear understanding? Because if they don't have a clear understanding, they're unable to safeguard children. So do you need to put more training in? When will you do that? Because obviously it's now a requirement. Is what you've done before not covered it in enough detail? And how do you know that staff know what these are? So, it's been mentioned how crucial it is that staff are aware of what they are. How will you check that? So again, it's something that leaders, you may need to reflect on. I think just going back, we won't go back slides, Khadija, now. When you will receive a copy of this PowerPoint, the paragraph that Khadija had mentioned for last year, in the title actually it said September 2021, that would be a September 2020 paragraph, and we will correct that on the PowerPoint, but that will allow you to see the difference between the two paragraphs. So just wanted to make that clear at this stage. So really important that you've got thorough training happening for your schools on both of these areas, and that you can check that staff understand what they are and how to be alert to them.
Right. Paragraph 22, emphasis has been added to the paragraph about multiple issues overlapping. So it is now clear that staff should always be vigilant and always raise any concerns with their designated safeguarding lead. So again, there's emphasis being put on multiple issues overlapping. So I would say to staff that it's really, really important that you are always vigilant, and don't presume that just because a particular pupil, a concern has been raised by another member of staff, the DSL is dealing with it. However, you notice you have a concern of your own about that child, but you feel that it's okay, it's been dealt with, somebody's raised a concern, DSL is dealing with it, it'll be covered. It won't be, because multiple issues, it is important they are reported. It doesn't matter how many times, because the concern you might have might shed different light onto the current concern that has been reported. It might highlight more risk of harm to that child. Therefore, it is important that every member of staff, regardless of how many concerns you have, they are reported, and you don't presume that just because somebody else has reported a concern, that child will be safeguarded. Different concerns are important that they are reported to the designated safeguarding lead, regardless of how many times you have to report it, because every concern could shed a different light on that case.
I think is equally, Khadija, it's important that staff are prompt in sharing those concerns. So if a child raises that concern with you today, or you notice that concern about that child today, it should be reported today. It's not something that we leave for a few days before we report it. We report it the day that we see a concern. And I think that's really important, again, that you raise this, share this, and emphasize this with your staff during the staff training day that you're going to have on safeguarding, that it's crucially important that concerns are raised quickly, and that any reporting procedures that you have are followed through equally quickly, so that verbally information has been shared, and that's obviously followed up with written documentation for senior leaders then to investigate. But really important, because part of keeping children safe is to work quickly, and of course any kind of delay in information coming from staff is then a failure to safeguard children.
Paragraph 23 now includes sexual abuse and county lines as examples of extrafamilial harms that children can be vulnerable to. So safeguarding issues that children can be vulnerable to outside the family homes, they have now added sexual abuse and county lines. Previously, it was just sexual exploitation, criminal exploitation, and serious violence. Now they've added sexual abuse and county lines to that list as well. And the reason for that is because sexual abuse and county lines are part of the widespread extrafamilial harms taking place currently. You know, there's so many cases of county lines on a day-to-day basis, sexual abuse as well, and therefore that is why it's been added to this paragraph, to the list of sexual exploitation, criminal exploitation, and serious violence. The expectation on staff, and specifically the DSL, is to taking into consideration whether children are at risk of abuse or exploitation in situations outside their families. So specifically for the DSL, it would be to analyze pupils' profiles, to look at what kind of backgrounds they come from, what areas they live in, what communities they are part of, and to kind of analyze the risks they may be exposed to. So, you know, is there something, is there a common thread of county lines or sexual abuse in that particular area? So then support can be put in beforehand, rather than something escalate and become a safeguarding issue. You put support and, you know, you create an awareness for that pupil, for the parents, so the child can be safeguarded beforehand, rather than it become a safeguarding issue, or they become part of county lines or sexual abuse or serious violence, criminal exploitation or sexual exploitation. Sina, would you like to add anything there?
Yeah, I mean, that's very clear. I think that's fine.
Okay, paragraph 24, new paragraph added to reflect the impact of technology in safeguarding and well-being issues, and that children and young people can be victims and perpetrators of their abuse. So again, it's going on to the kind of abuse that can take place online. And that's why this specific paragraph has been added. There is much great emphasis on online safety now, because technology is a significant component in many safeguarding issues, because abuse happens online, offline, or both. Children can abuse their peers online, and this can be abusive, harassing, or misogynistic messages, non-consensual sharing of indecent images. Again, you know, if that is the case and that does come to light, then you reflect back to the guidance that was mentioned in the previous session. Sharing of abusive images, pornography, and to those who don't want to receive such content. So again, it's all online, where pupils are exposed, children are exposed to things that they may not want to be exposed to. Their images are shared where obviously they haven't consented, but even if they have consented, that is an online safety issue. And a lot of harassment takes place online as well. Like I said previously, there is no difference now in children's real lives to their lives online. There is no difference. They are exposed to as many risks online as they are to in real life. Hasina, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that's, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the definition of sexual abuse has been amended, so there is no longer a reference to a high level of violence. So it now reads in paragraph 29, it now reads sexual abuse involves forcing or enticing a child or young person to take part in sexual activities. It doesn't necessarily involve, doesn't have to necessarily involve violence. So previously there was a high element of violence included in the explanation of sexual abuse. Now they've removed that, so it doesn't necessarily have to involve violence for it to be sexual abuse.
Okay, so that's the end of our session 3. Inshallah, we shall come back for the final session shortly. Jazakallah.